Hey everyone, how's it going? I recently had an emergency with my website and my hosting and my marketing agency, and I reached out to Gabe Fletcher in an emergency from detailinggrowth.com, and he really saved my rear end. And I felt like I owed him. I wanted to talk to him and put this out there so that other people can see, what I went through, maybe learn from my mistakes and kind of maybe get an idea of what they should be looking for in an ad agency or marketing agency. And before we start, I just really wanted to point out that I can't work with Gabe. Gabe has my market area locked. And so, he came through in a clutch emergency and he talked to his client in the area and kind of let him, gave him a heads up that I was going to need this emergency help. And then once we get kind of situated, we're going to just cut ties. I mean, unfortunately, but, it's just the way the business is, you don't want to overlap markets. So that's a disclosure on, I'm not getting paid to say this. Gabe did me a really good solid. And so I want to do him a solid too. So, all right. So, short story with the issues that I was having. I didn't really control my website. I didn't really control my domain. I mean, I kind of owned it, obviously, but it was hosted by my marketing agency. I had a login, but they kind of controlled the overall login. And really, over time, we kind of grew apart, and the owner and I sort of had a falling out. And when we did, I kind of panicked because he had a history of kind of irrational behavior. And I was afraid that I was going to get locked out of my website permanently again because I don't own it and I didn't have that trust there anymore. So I reached out to Gabe. Gabe and I know each other pretty well and asked him, could he do an emergency backup of my website and get me transferred over? And Gabe worked like 24/7 for one day. I felt bad. I had to go to bed and Gabe was still up working on my website, but it's working. It's working great. And maybe Gabe, you could just kind of explain what had to be done. Might be helpful.
So when you had touched base with me, um, you were afraid of losing the site, and you gave me some credentials. I was able to jump into the back end and create some backups and get a copy of the website moved onto your own hosting that you controlled. So we set
Yeah.
you up with some hosting. You got your own account. We moved your site over. After doing that, it actually was rather difficult to get the backup generated because of the issues related to performance with the website. So that took an extended period of time. Normally, it's super easy to just generate a backup and move it, but it was so poorly performing that it nearly choked the server it was running on every time that we went to generate the backup. So we eventually got that done. We got the site moved and migrated, and we got that running and got your website secure, got your passwords locked down. The biggest things that we found after the fact were issues related to performance.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I went from like a D or an F. It kind of fluctuated between a D and a F, and now we're sitting at an A, and it loads like super quick, and it's a lot simpler to edit on, for me, obviously. And I had brought that up, multiple times that I was concerned about the speed, previously. I thought maybe I would just kind of touch on maybe where I messed up in my selections, and then you can kind of explain what to look for in an ad agency. So I'll tell you where I kind of messed up is I started off my company about 18 months ago, and I created like a real simple website. It was really ugly, whatever. I found somebody. I didn't like what they were doing with the website. I didn't pay anything for that, and then somebody just told me, hey, talk to these people, they're great, and I know the owner. And I was like, oh, okay, and so I went with them, and then I stayed with them. And then if you like to play poker, you know what it means to be pot committed. So I probably dumped $20,000 between SEO and the initial site design and all that kind of stuff, over the course of 18 months. And
Wow.
so, yeah, yeah. I mean, it was, the initial build was 4,000, which was pretty reasonable. I was an early client, and then I had a couple like upgrades throughout the last year and a half. But then, of course, SEO and marketing, all the blog post publishing and everything. So, I kind of made that mistake. I just jumped in, and honestly, I didn't interview them. I saw a couple websites that they did, and I was like, "Oh, this looks good," And at the time, I was mainly concerned about a nice looking website because mine was trash. And so there wasn't like a lot of interview. There wasn't like, I don't know what their experience is. But I know that you have like 20 years of web development and stuff. And those are the things that I really should have looked for, talk to other clients, for example, things like that. And so I definitely made those mistakes. And then once you get in, it's hard to leave, because you're like, I got so much invested. And then we had a disagreement briefly, and him and I got into it big time. I totally wasn't expecting it. And then that's what triggered me to think like, man, like if he flew off the handle again, like I could lose everything. They could shut me down. And sure enough, honestly, he claims it didn't happen. But, the afternoon that you started working on my site, I couldn't log in anymore on the old host. So maybe just tell people what I should have done. What should I have done better so that I didn't cost myself, whatever.
So I think the biggest thing is that, one, you should definitely be vetting who you're working with. And that can come in the form of just, questions like, how would you handle this? Or how would you handle that? Types of questions that you would ask that agency. It could come in the fact of actually, asking them for some referrals and see if, they'd be willing to let you speak to somebody. A lot of agencies are hesitant, but, most of the good ones are willing to say, yeah, sure, call this person. They'll be more than happy to tell you about their experience. I think the biggest thing is that I'm trying to think of a way to formulate this. The biggest point is that you definitely need somebody who's going to stand on integrity. And that should also be very clear cut in whoever you're talking to. Like that should very much shine through in the overall plan that they're giving you.
Right.
Things like long-term contract lockouts, no clear-cut expectations, the website doesn't belong to you, and those all those things, they all add up to just be a nightmare of an experience. And
Is contracts normal? Because I
so
didn't have a contract.
Right. So contracts are normal depending on what you're getting from the agency. And a lot of the times agencies will spread the cost of working with them, depending on what they're doing, out over a certain amount of time. And you're obligated to participate for that long, or you don't get what you're paying for, or they shut it off, or whatever it may be.
Gotcha.
Um,
So
we
you're
we
saying
do
like I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so we do something similar to that. We have guys that just want to buy whatever they're getting outright immediately. And then we have people who need that help to just spread the cost out to make it a little bit more affordable. And, contracts are commonplace. Right. So agencies will make contracts and ask you to participate in them. Sometimes there'll be certain stipulations about you need to pay this amount for this amount of time, or otherwise you don't own it, or they'll require you to participate for however long you want to have the website, and you never own it ever. You have no chance to own it. So contracts can be common. We have guys who need to spread the cost out. We have guys who just want to buy it outright up front, and they want to be done with it. So contracts are commonplace, but you definitely need to read them and be sure you understand what you're agreeing to.
So the contracts are they more like a loan? Is it more used like if you're loaning, almost like, so like say I paid for my website outright, but like let's say for example the website's going to cost, I'm just making this up, $12,000, and we spread it over $1,000 over 12 months. I could totally see a contract being commonplace for that. Or, you're like, hey, this is a $12,000 website, or again, just making these random numbers up. But we'll give it to you for $6,000, but you're not going to own it, like, so we can kind of save costs that way,
Mhm.
maybe. But is it normal to have a contract otherwise, except, or not really?
It's pretty normal to have a contract agreement, even if
Okay,
it's just basic understanding of expectations with an agency. And the
gotcha.
what you're referring to spreading costs out, is very commonplace. It's different for every agency and the type of business model that they run.
Gotcha.
Um, some agencies want that, they want to do profit by volume. Some agencies want to do profit by volume and they will onboard everybody for a lower cost. Other
Mhm.
agencies just they want the long-term low ticket income. Other agencies will price that in a manner to make it affordable for you. It's everything in between.
Yeah, that's where I started. I started to, get held up on contracts here, but that's where I started panicking. Is, hey, do I actually own this? And everybody's like, oh, do you have a contract? Do I own this? Can I control it? Can I log in and take my site and move it elsewhere without, but I didn't have a contract or anything. So I think it's good for people to know. I think that's a really big thing. Like, whether or not you own your site or not is pretty important. And it may not matter to some people, but for me, it was really important to actually own it. So
Yeah, I mean, a website is an actual tangible business asset. Like
sure,
it takes up space on a web server. It is very much a tangible business asset that can be quantified in cost and value.
sure,
And if you don't own it, you really don't have control of your business, because like you could experience hostile takeover. You could see the contractor agreement be dissolved. um you know Luckily you didn't have a contract, so for all intensive purposes the website belonged to you because you paid for it.
yeah,
So you didn't have any stipulations on intellectual property or anything like that, so you were able to pick it up and move it without having to worry about any of that.
yeah. And I think that brings up a good point. You said it's an asset, and for those of us who are getting old here, someday, we're going to move on, right? And I think, if you don't own a website and you retire or you sell your business, it's done. But if you go to sell your business and you own that website, I think it's important because that's an asset. I mean, for whatever they did and our disagreements with them, it's still, I got $20,000 into a website. There's you can attest to the fact there's hundreds and hundreds of pages on that site. And so that's something that another business, if they were buying you out, wouldn't have to pay for or do. They could go and find and replace and edit and change some cornerstone content, but otherwise, it's yours to sell. And you could even potentially, you know, hey, I'll sell you my site and I'm getting, X thousands of people organic traffic a month. I will just redirect that.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that and just redirect the site for you. So now, like, I can sell my site and you basically get everybody that's coming to my traffic. I think, at least that's my inclination.
That necessarily doesn't work the way that you think it does anymore, and that's because Google knows when a website's being redirected. Now
Yeah,
you can link outwards from when someone lands on a page, and
sure.
like you can tell them you need to go and talk to these people. But
Gotcha.
in a service-based industry it's a little bit difficult to do that. But what you did touch on was, it being, like we said, it is being an asset, and you can quantify the value of that asset into your valuation by how much of your revenue comes from that website, and how much you have invested in it, and how much market share you have because of it. The
Sure.
market share is the biggest calculation that is so important. And if you can tie that and have a measurable way to track that with your website compared to what you're billing, and population and
Sure.
rankings, all of that adds up to be a significant significant piece of the puzzle when you go to sell a business, because that's the primary reason we mention it, is because if you sell a business, somebody is usually either looking to rebrand it, or most of the time they're looking to just continue operating it under that
Right.
same name. And if they don't need to put the legwork in on marketing, that's all the benefit for them.
Yeah, sure. And even if it's not even if they're just like, oh wow, I don't have to build a website. I don't have to pay, 4, 5, 10, whatever, it happens to be, especially if you're selling stuff and you got like an e-commerce platform too, which we don't, but it's like, hey, I don't have to do that. I just give you the login information.
It's
Yeah, I
coming
mean,
up on, it's pretty reasonable.
if you want to spend $10,000 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you should do your research, and if not, then whatever, that's on you. You're going to be in my situation.
It's listen, I can't even imagine the position you would be in if you had got locked out of the website that you've put so much money into. Like, I wouldn't even want to put myself into that position. And I know that the way we operate our agency, even if I have dropped down horrible, like come to blows type of exchanges with a client, not that I ever have, um, I'm not going to hold their website hostage. Like,
Right. Yeah.
as long as you have paid the total amount that is due on your particular site that you are well informed about prior to committing,
Sure.
uh, as long as that's paid for, you can pick it up and move it and take it wherever you want. We'll even help you migrate, even under horrible communication and like experienced circumstances. We'll help you migrate to another host and to another agency. Like, none of what we do is built upon holding people hostage if they're not happy, because I would rather work extra hard and make sure that we do our job and we quote these projects to do the job effectively without having to worry about working really hard on it. So that way everybody's happy with the results and everyone gets what they need. Because if it's advantageous for the client, it's advantageous for us. And what I tell people is that if you've seen the movie The Blind Side,
I've
the
seen
main
it. Yeah.
the woman in the movie talks about, the first check is for the mortgage and the second check is for the insurance. Well, we want to be the third check in the agency for every business. We want to be the third check that gets written every month. Say, hey, that's Gabe and Tyler, dude, pay those dudes because they keep the pipeline flowing. And
For sure.
that's our goal, and that's the mantra that we follow. And that, I think, is just, it's really, really important to have a good moral compass in this game, because if you don't, you're gonna have a rough go.
And you'll pay. You get paid back. Stuff like this. Like somebody may decide to come to you, but you get paid back by using honesty, and I do it in my business too. I tell people, like, don't buy the 10-year coating if you're only going to keep your car for 5 years and trade it into the dealer, and don't do, here's how you take care of your car so you don't have to come back to me. And what ends up happening is, sure, I lose a little bit because they don't come back for certain things. But I gain it because they're like, yeah, this guy's honest about what he's doing. But yeah, to go back to what you said about you don't know what you would do. Like, I think we're on pace. I gotta log into QuickBooks, but I think we're at about maybe $250,000 this year. And I'm like 10%,
That's a
is
lot.
going, like 10% is dedicated to marketing, at least, not including like the actual cost of the ads themselves, but like the SEO, the website, the upgrades, all that stuff. It's like 10%. And that starts, I don't know what a good percentage is, but that's
Ten
where I'm at.
percent,
So
a 10% investment in marketing of your total gross rev is, you're probably on point for where you should be. It could be more, it could be less. I think
sure.
10% is a pretty solid number. So I think you're right where you need to be.
So yeah, my marketing company kind of got into that way. I think via me, honestly, but I could be wrong. I don't want to like take credit for stuff, but I think they got into it and they started doing stuff for other, detailing industries. But I definitely want to hear why, you feel it's important, because I know some people almost, they're like, maybe it's better to have like a fresh set of eyes or something, if that makes sense. I've heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest difference with us is that one, I've got 2 decades worth of experience, and so does my partner in doing this work. And that also comes with direct industry experience via my own shop. So the things that we put in place for other businesses are direct results of trial and error of what we have done in our shop. And our shop's going to touch like $1.5 million this year. And
Yeah.
that's the big difference in working with an agency who's just here to like provide you a web service versus working with an agency who knows what it's like to operate in this industry, and they know what it's like to go through the same struggles that you're dealing with, and to have somebody that understands how to properly deploy those mechanics in your marketing program is just about priceless.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Even like when you're talking about making content, um, in our area, by and large, clear bra is the keyword, right? Like, not many people call it paint protection film. Almost, I get like 1% of my clients call it PPF. Um, but that comes with experience, right? Like if you opened an agency, not that I don't have enough time, nor would I have an interest, but if I was, I would know that, you know, perhaps we skew towards clear bra versus paint protection, and PPF, but like that stuff gets pervasive into the website. Those mistakes, I mean, can get pervasive, and then you're like trying to do a find replace, and it just doesn't make sense.
Right. And that's the biggest part of why it's so important to work with an agency that understands your industry, because you get a chance to skip all of the explaining and
Yeah.
misinformation that that agency has surrounding the services that you offer.
No, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I write all the content for my own stuff. So I didn't have too much of an issue with that. And my SEO guy, like my POC for SEO itself, was good, and he understood. But 100%, if you got to explain every little step, like time is money, right? Time is money. So,
Time absolutely is money.
um, so I hope you guys maybe watch this and save yourself, 20,000 plus dollars. And, we learn from mistakes. And I think in our industry, a lot of people are afraid to admit that, they've had deficiencies. Everybody's perfect. Everybody does a perfect job. I think it's important to recognize where you made a mistake, find the person that helped you fix the mistake, and then share that information with other people so that they don't make the same mistake. And I'll tell you, I made the mistake. You heard about it here for the last however long, and I don't want you to make that mistake. And I do want to say big thanks to Gabe. He came through. I had zero downtime on my website. Zero. I mean, there was probably like a 30-second period or some ridiculous thing.
It was very
Um,
small.
yeah, it was very small, and it was like 8 o'clock at night because you were still working. Well, you still had 6 hours, 7 hours left, but it was like 7:30 at night. 20 seconds, you were like, it's going to be down for like 30 seconds or something. I never even noticed. I'm sure my clients didn't either, and it was seamless. And the other eight, just to really drive that point home, the owner that I had gotten into a disagreement with didn't even realize that the site had been backed up, migrated, and back up. Like he just assumed that it was online, with the old server through them. So big thanks. I'm sad that we can't work together, long term. But I know I'm not the only person you've saved. And so big thanks. For everybody still watching at this point in the video, which doesn't happen a lot, but for everybody still watching, um, it's a big deal, and I just wanted to make this video because I thought kindness deserves recognition. So
Absolutely. Hey man, I'm happy to help you out when
I
you
appreciate.
needed it. And I'm never ever against helping somebody out in a situation like that. So thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks.